Sriman Sen, the 22nd branch of the Caitanya tree, was a very faithful servant of Lord Caitanya. He knew nothing else but the lotus feet of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Purport: Sriman Sen was one of the inhabitants of Navadvip and was a constant companion of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I couldn't find much reference to Sriman Sena. He's a great devotee, of course. So we move on to the next slide, which is very ecstatic purport by Srila Prabhupada. Shri Gadada Dasa Shaka Sarupari Kaji Gnera Mukiyena Boilaila Hari. Shri Gadada Dasa Shaka Sarupari Kali Ganera Mukiyena Boilaila Hari. Do you want to do it?
Shri Gadada Dasa Shaka Sarupari Kali Ganera Mukiyena Boilaila Hari.
Synonyms: Sri Gadada Das, of the name Sri Gadada Das. Shaka, another branch. Sarvupari, above all. Kaji Ganera, of the Kazis, Mahabharatan magistrates. Mukhe, in the mouth. Yenha, one who. Bolaila, caused to speak. Hari, the holy name of Hari. Translation: Sri Gadada Das, the 23rd branch, was understood to be the topmost, for he induced all the Mahabharatan Kazis to chant the holy name of Lord Hari. All these branches are so ecstatic. Purport: about 8 or 10 miles from Calcutta, on the banks of the Ganges, is a village known as Indiyadabagram. Srila Gadada Das was known as an inhabitant of this village. The Bhakti Ratnakara, 7th chapter, informs us that after the disappearance of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Gadada Das came from Navadvip to Katwa. Thereafter he came to India, Daha, and resided there. He is stated to be the luster of the body of Srimati Radharani, just as Srila Gadada Pandita Goswami is an incarnation of Srimati Radharani herself. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is sometimes explained to be Radha Bhavadyuti Savalita, or characterized by the emotions and bodily luster of Srimati Radharani. Gadada Das is his duty or luster. In the Gaura Ganadesh Deepika, he is described to be the expansion potency of Srimati Radharani. He counts among the associates of both Srila Gaura Hari and Nityananda Prabhu. As a devotee of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was one of the associates of Lord Krishna in conjugal love, and as a devotee of Lord Nityananda is considered to be one of the friends of Krishna in pure devotional service. Even though he was an associate of Lord Nityananda Prabhu, he was not among the cowherd boys, but was situated in the transcendental mellow of conjugal love. He established a temple of Sri Gaurasundara in Katwa. In 1434, Sakabda era, but in our era it's 1534 AD, when Lord Nityananda Prabhu was empowered by Lord Chaitanya to preach the Sankirtan movement in Bengal, Sri Gadada Das was one of Lord Nityananda's chief assistants. He preached the Sankirtan movement by requesting everyone to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This simple preaching method of Sri Gadada Das can be followed by anyone and everyone in a position of society. One must simply be a sincere and serious servant of Nityananda Prabhu and preach this cult door to door. When Srila Gadada Das Pandit was preaching the cult of Hari Kirtan, there was a magistrate who was very much against this Sankirtan movement. Following in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Gadada Das one night went to the house of the Qazi and requested him to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The Qazi replied, all right, I shall chant the Hare Krishna. I shall chant Hare Krishna tomorrow. On hearing this, Sri Gadadhar Das Prabhu began to dance. He said, why tomorrow? You've already chanted the Hare Krishna mantra. So simply continued. In the Guru Gasnesh Dipinika it is said, won't do that, Srila Gadadhar Das is considered to be a united form of Chandrakanti, who is the effulgence of Srimati Radharani, and Purnananda, who is the expansion of Lord Balaram's very dear girlfriend. Thus, Srila Gadadhar Das Prabhu was one of the associates of both Caitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. Once, while Sri Gadadhar Das Prabhu was returning to Bengal from Jagannath Puri with Nityananda Prabhu, he forgot himself, began talking very loudly as if he were a girl of Rajabhumi selling yogurt. And Srila Nityananda Prabhu noted this. Another time, while absorbed in the ecstasy of the gopis, he carried a jug full of Ganges on his water as if he was selling milk. When Lord Caitanya Mahaprabhu appeared in the house of Raghava Pandit while going to Vrindavan, Gadadhar Das went to see him, and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was so glad that he put his foot on his head. When Gadadhar Das Prabhu was present in India, he established a Bala Gopal Murti for worship there. Sri Madhava Ghosh performed the drama known as Dana Kanda with the help of Sri Nityananda Prabhu and Sri Gadadhar Das. This is explained in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Antya Kanda, 5th chapter. The tomb of Gadadhar Das Prabhu, which is in the village of Indiada, was under the control of the Samyoga Vaishnavas and later under the direction of Siddha Bhagavan Das Babaji of Kalna. By his order, Sri Madhusudan Mulak, one of the members of the aristocratic Mulak family of Nari Kaladanga in Calcutta, established a Patavadi monastery there in Bengal, year 1256. He also arranged for the worship of a deity named Sri Radhakanta. His son Balichandra Malik established Gaur-Nitai deities there in Bengal, year of 1312. Thus on the throne of the temple, both Gaur-Nityananda deities and Radhakrishna deities. Below the throne is a tablet with an inscription in Sanskrit. In that temple there is also a small deity, Lord Shiva's Gopeshvara. This is all described on a stone by the side of the entrance door. Om Aginatam Randasya Janandana Salakaya Chakshara Militam Yeda Tasvei Shri Guru Namaha. Srila Prabhupada gives a lot of details here about the location in Bengal, and there's a lot of information about all this information about Gadadhar Das Prabhu is from the Chaitanya Bhagavat, was written by Vrindavan Das Thakur. So Srila Prabhupada gives reference to this, the Chaitanya Bhagavat, saying that a play that was organised by Madhava Ghosh and performed as a drama with Gadadhar Das. So I went looking for that play. It was in the Adi-lila 5th chapter. I didn't find it, but what I did find was the description of the ecstatic journey of Nityananda Prabhu from Jagannath Puri to Bengal, where Srila Prabhupada mentions here that Sri Gadadhar Pandit was in that team. It was rather a very, very esoteric trip that they embarked on, very ecstatic, esoteric, wild party, transcendental party. So I just maybe want to share that with you, and then elaborate a little bit on some of Gadadhar Das's pastimes that were described very briefly here in the purport by Srila Prabhupada. So the first thing that I have to establish that we have two Gadadhars. So for the benefit of everybody here, the deities on our left, that's Lord Nityananda. So we are going to talk about Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya there. And underneath, we can't see him now, is a picture of the called Panchatattva. There's 5 devotees with their arms outstretched, and they're all the different incarnations of Krishna. And Gadadhar Pandit is one. He's the Hladini Shakti, is the potency, the pleasure potency of Krishna in the form of Radharani, glowing golden. So we also have Gadadhar Das, that's who we're talking about right now. And he's described to be the effulgence, that he's the luster of Radharani. So just the Lord can expand, not in all his potencies, but he can disseminate different potencies to different devotees. So this expansion there's an expansion potency of Radharani. So Srila Prabhupada also explains in the purport that Gadadhar in his last life was a gopi in Vrindavan, and he was engaged in amorous in Lila, the Rasa Lila with Krishna, but also he was a gopi friend of Nityananda Prabhu's as well. So he was very, very enlightened soul, and he was a great associate of both of these great soul, of both of these, both Lord Nityananda and Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. So just to sort of put things into place, what have I got here? I brought the wrong notes. Okay, it's all right, I wrote the notes, so just wing it. So to put things into place, Lord Chaitanya was born in Navadvip, and then he lived in Navadvip till the age of 24 till he took sannyas. So when he took sannyas, he then went to Jagannath Puri with his associates, and after taking sannyas for 6 years, he travelled around all of India. So then, after a few years of travelling around, he came back to Jagannath Puri and said, "It's time for me to make my pilgrimage to Vrindavan." And he set out for Vrindavan. He's always had Vrindavan on his mind. That was his Krishna and Radha. And then, of course, we know later on he did go to Vrindavan and established all these holy tirthas. These places of worship that we go to now have been set up there for us, Radha Kund and Shama Kund and other places where Krishna performed his pastimes. So this time he didn't actually make it there because he said, "I'm setting out Vrindavan," and everybody said, "All right, we're coming with you." He just about brought the whole town with him. And then as he was going down the path to Vrindavan, more and more people joined the path. So whatever town he came to, there's literally millions of souls chanting Hari and just wanting to get a glimpse of the Lord. Of course, anybody who got a glimpse of the Lord, he was so effulgent, like as bright as 1,000,000,000 suns, that people just immediately become enchanted and taste the ecstasy of the nectar of the spiritual nectar of chanting the holy names. So the Lord made it as far as Bengal, and there were so many people there. Just a brief mention by Srila Prabhupada, this is where he was reunited with Gadadhar Das when he went to the house of Raghava Pandit, and he saw Gadadhar Das, and he was so delighted that he blessed him by putting his feet on his head, which is a great blessing, get the feet of the Lord on your head. We all desire the feet of the spiritual master on our head. So after that, Lord Chaitanya figured that it's not really possible for me to make this pilgrimage to Vrindavan with 1,000,000 people in tow. It's not going to happen. So then he went back to Jagannath Puri with his associates. And then Sri Chaitanya had all his Lord Nityananda, so many great souls came to join him in Jagannath Puri, and they all chanted and went around the district encouraging everybody to chant the holy names of Krishna. This was a great inauguration of Krishna consciousness. And then he called Nityananda Prabhu, this Nityananda, and he said, can you go back to Bengal? this is about 3 years into his sannyas, he said, Bengal's also starved of Krishna consciousness, so you just enlighten all the souls there. So, of course, nobody wanted to leave the association of Lord Nityananda's. When you have a great personality, Krishna conscious, nobody wants that personality to leave or to leave their association. But Nityananda took the orders of Lord Caitanya upon his head, and he immediately started to go to Bengal. And he took Gadadhar Das with him, and he Puranandara and Puranidhi, and he took a team of great devotees with him. And they started out okay. They started walking towards Bengal, but gradually the ecstasy started to build up. Lord Caitanya, Lord Nityananda was ecstatically chanting and dancing and moving about. And some of the devotees also, all of the devotees also began to feel the ecstasy. There was, I don't have my notes, there was one devotee who became so stunned with the ecstatic emotion of chanting Hare Krishna that he assumed the form of Gopal in the middle of the road and stood in the threefold bending form for about an hour. There was another devotee who thought he was a cowherd boy and he started to climb a tree. And other devotees, they were making clicking sounds like they were herding cows, and they were all in ecstasy. Gadadhar Das thought he was Radharani. He put a pot on his head. He said, "Who wants to buy yogurt? Anyone want to buy yogurt?" And Lord Nityananda was observing all this, and they were chanting ecstatically, walking about, that they lost the direction. So after a while they asked somebody, "Where's the direction to Bengal?" Or actually following the Ganga. He said, "Oh, you've missed it. It's 2 hours that way." So they started off that way, and they once again fell into an ecstatic swoon, and they were dancing, and they went too far, and they asked somebody else, "Where's the Ganga?" He said, "Oh, you're 20 kilometres, you're 20 miles away from the Ganga, it's that way." So in this way they sort of zigzagged, just totally oblivious of any material condition. They didn't feel the hunger or thirst. They were just completely ecstatically absorbed in chanting holy names of the Lord. So finally, after a period of time, they did come to Bengal, and they came to Panihati, which was Raghava Pandit's house. This is where Lord Caitanya met Gadadhar and put his feet on his head. And Gadadhar also had a house there. So there, Lord Nityananda began this ecstatic kirtan. Raghava Pandit, of course, was absolutely delighted to see him, gave his prostrated obeisances. Then all the devotees had heard, "Oh, Lord Nityananda's here with all his friends." Devotees, so everybody started to come to Raghava Pandit's house, and they had this big kirtan, huge kirtan, chanting Hare Krishna, dancing. Lord Nityananda kept losing his balance, hitting the floor, getting up, dancing wildly, and everybody was dancing around him. And then at one point in time, Lord Nityananda sobered up, and he went onto the altar, and he sat on the Lord Vishnu's Singhasan, who's sitting there, and he said, "I want Abhishek." Like that. So he assumed the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which he was, right? He was dancing as a devotee with all other devotees, but at this point in time he took the mood of the Supreme Person. So he said, "Abhishek." So they brought 100 pots of Ganga water, and they began to bathe him. And as he was being bathed, he was glancing mercifully upon all the devotees, and when they got Lord Nityananda's glance, they became so imbued with ecstasy that they were just completely lost control. And this was going on, and then after the Abhishek, Lord Nityananda said to Raghava Pandit, "I would like a garland of Kadamba flowers." So you know what Kadamba flowers are? You do, you've picked them, right? And made garlands. Have we got any Kadamba flowers on the altar here at this point in time? No, I can't see any. But they're growing on this huge Kadamba tree. So Raghava Pandit was a little bit confused. He said, there's no Kadamba flowers, it's not the right season for Kadamba flowers. Nityananda Prabhu said, go and have a look anyway, there might be. So he goes outside, and lo and behold, there's Kadamba flowers growing on a lemon tree. So Raghava Pandit quickly got a needle, picked some Kadamba flowers, made this beautiful garland and gave it to Lord Nityananda. And then Lord Nityananda stayed there for a period of time, a week, 2 or 3 weeks. And sometime, at one point in time, he said he was feeling like, I want some jewellery. Right? And simultaneously, when he had that desire, that inclination, then all these devotees started to bring all this fantastic jewellery, these pearl necklaces, finely carved golden earrings and other ornaments that had rubies and emeralds and all sorts of precious gems. They just kept bringing them. So my personal suspicion is that the demigods were present and they started to shower the Lord with these beautiful, exquisite ornaments, and then all these silks for his turban with precious ornament, precious jewels, pearls, and then all these beautiful aromatic flowers. And so all this started to just accumulate, and Lord Nityananda was trying everything on. He had 10 rings on his 10 fingers, or his 10 fingers were covered with rings. He might have had more rings on each finger. He had pearls on his neck and beautiful necklaces on his chest. He had ankle bells. It was like, it's worth a fortune. So they were just, he looked exquisite, and then he had all these beautiful silk shining clothes that when he danced they all swayed with his body movements, and he was and the most effulgent thing about Lord Nityananda was his face, because his face was shining like that of a million moons. So we have the effulgent Lord Nityananda with all his beautiful clothes, and all the associates got the rest of the clothes and they start to dress themselves as cowherd boys. So they start put necklaces on, and they found belts, and they put a flute, they put their reed flutes and their little sticks and horns on their belts, and then they had sticks for herding cows, and they're all ecstatically having kirtan, and Lord Nityananda took them out to go on Harinam. So Lord Nityananda's dressed like this million moons, looking like a million moons, and all the associates are like cowherd boys. And then they went along the bank of the Ganges, and they were associating with all the Vaishnavas, going to Vaishnavas' houses and encouraging everybody to chant Hare Krishna. And it's said that there were a lot of impersonalists along that bank there, and Mayavadis and so forth, but they had no chance. As soon as they saw the chanting party, as soon as they heard the chanting of the holy names, then they immediately prostrated themselves, surrendered to the holy name, and joined the chanting party and became devotees. So in this way Lord Nityananda moved about, and finally he came to Gadadhar's house. Gadadhar had a house there, so we're talking about Gadadhar. So he went inside the house and he stayed there for a little while, and inside that house Gadadhar had this little Gopal deity. So Lord Nityananda grabbed the deity, clasped around his chest and started dancing with the deity. And then he encouraged everybody else to dance too, individually. So he's sitting there watching all the devotees dance, and the more ecstatic the devotees, when they started dancing individually, then the whole group of devotees, everyone became ecstatic. So this was going on for like 3 months in that village, or in that area there, Panihari. And at one point in time, this is a story that Srila Prabhupada mentions, Gadadhar was in so much ecstasy that he went to the house of this magistrate, this Qazi, this Mohammedan ruler, who absolutely loathed the devotees, hated them, hated the sound of the holy name. And so one evening, Gadadhar just barged into his house and he said, "Where is the Qazi? Where is the Qazi?" And all the relatives were completely bewildered. What's going on? Who is this? What's going on? He said, "If the Qazi doesn't chant Hare Krishna, I'll cut off his head immediately." The Qazi comes running out. He's fuming. He was so mad. And he saw Gadadhar, and he must have known Gadadhar, and he just calmed down. He said, "Gadadhar, what do you want?" And Gadadhar said, "Well, I want to tell you something, that Lord Nityananda and Lord Caitanya have inaugurated the yuga for this age, which is the chanting of the holy names. And they've inundated the whole world with the chanting of holy names. The only one that hasn't chanted so far is you. So I'm asking you please to chant the holy names of Hari, the name of Lord Caitanya, and this will liberate you from all your simple reactions that you've created, and I will personally take them upon myself. Just chant the Lord's name." So Qazi was stunned. He wasn't expecting this barrage, so his mind was a little bit bewildered. So he said, "Oh, well, look, I'll chant Hari, I'll chant the names of Hari tomorrow. You just go home now, all right?" And Gadadhar was in ecstasy. He said, "Why wait? You've already chanted the Lord's name. You've already chanted the Lord's name, so you've become liberated from all your sinful activities just by chanting the name once. Why wait till tomorrow? Why not start now?" And then he started dancing ecstatically, crying out the Lord's holy names, and then he left. And the Qazi was just completely stunned. So it says in Vrindavan Das Thakur says in the Chaitanya Bhagavat that this is the pure devotee, that when you have the Lord's holy names on your lips, you totally become fearless, and you're able to give so much mercy that it's said that this Qazi, he was so wicked, so evil, that anyone that was in his presence became contaminated. Yet Gadadhar was fearless. He went to his house and encouraged him to chant, and he chanted even once. So this is the mood of pure devotees, mood of Prahlad. So then they were having ecstatic pastimes, chanting, dancing, Lord seems to be looking on. And one time Gadadhar was in so much ecstasy that he picked up a pot of Ganges water, having it on his head, and he's walking around the mood of Radharani saying, "Anyone want to buy milk? Got fresh milk here? Anyone want some milk?" And then other devotees, they were climbing trees and just enacting the pastime cowboys. They all were in the mood of Adi-lila. And at one point in time there was this beautiful fragrance of dara flowers. I don't know what they are, but it's just like an overwhelming fragrance, and they all wondered where they're coming from. And Lord Nityananda said, "Oh, Lord Chaitanya is here to see this ecstatic performance of our kirtan, our dancing. He's here to share in the ecstasy." So then there was ecstatic chanting and dancing, and finally they moved on to Navadvip. So Navadvip was the place where Lord Caitanya was born. It was where it all happened. It's where they were chanting and dancing. And Navadvip was like a small city. And it was full of, previous to Lord Caitanya, it was full of Mayavadis and impersonalists, and also it was a very unsavoury place. This was written in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, that there were a lot of rogues and thieves and dacoits there. So it was sort of a mixture of all sorts of things. Of course, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was there, he converted so many dacoits. The principal ones we know were Jagai and Madai. He converted them. They were real bad news. And so many other impersonalists and Mayavadis. So the town was very receptive to the chanting of Krishna's name. So when they saw Lord Nityananda, there was huge Sankirtan parties, and Lord Nityananda had all his beautiful jewellery, and he would lead all these congregational chantings. So there was one particular Brahmana there, it's like Brahmana by name, but he was a dacoit by nature. So he had become a very wicked person, and he had no qualms about robbing people and even killing them. He had no reservations, and he saw all this beautiful jewellery on Lord Nityananda, and he became greedy for it. He became obsessed by it. So he followed the chanting party around, just watching Lord Nityananda. Nityananda saw this, and after a period of time he went and stayed, I forget the name of the devotee. He stayed with some poor, some austere Brahmin devotee on the outskirts of Navadvip. Just this house all by itself, set it up, right, for this Brahmana. So this Brahmana got his dacoit friends, and he said, look, Goddess Chandi is so merciful to us that she's given us all the wealth we need in one place. This Nityananda, he's carrying lakhs and lakhs of this priceless gold and silver and jewellery all over his body, and we should go there and deprive him of it all, and we'll be rich. And everybody's going, yeah, let's do it. So they hatched a plan. So this Brahmana sent a spy to see what Lord Nityananda was doing in the house of this Brahmana. At that point in time, he had his associate devotees there. They were feasting and they were chanting. They were in complete ecstasy, chanting the whole names of Hari. And the spy come back, and he said, well, at the moment they're all eating, and they're all in rapture, chanting. He said, oh, well, let them eat. We'll get them when they get asleep. So they found a nice, comfortable tree to all sit against, and they're all postulating on how rich they were going to be. Oh, I want his necklace. I will leave the silver ankles to me. Give me his gold earrings. So we're talking like this, and while they were talking, they all fell asleep. And this deep trance just overcame them, like they were anaesthetised. And they slept all night, and they woke up in the morning with the cawing of the crow. So they looked up, said, what happened? We slept through this. And they started blaming each other. You were awake, why didn't you keep us awake? Well, you weren't awake either. So they were arguing, and then the Brahmin said, okay, I know what happened. We didn't make a sacrifice to the goddess Chandi before we did this, so she deprived us of this wealth. Today we'll do a proper sacrifice. We'll get meat and we'll get some wine, and we'll make a big sacrifice to goddess Chandi. So you can imagine what goddess Chandi is like, right? So that night they had this big yajna, and they offered meat and wine to Chandi. So the next day they set themselves up, so they come back the next night. They were going to deprive Lord Nityananda. You've heard this story before, haven't you? Everybody's heard this story before? Yeah. Everybody was going to deprive they were going to deprive Lord Nityananda. They were going to rob the whole house, rob everybody, take all the loot. So they went there, but they noticed that there's all these guards there, these really big burly guards, and they're all chanting the names of the Lord incessantly. And they had tilak, and they were thinking, who are these people? And they looked like they could clean like 10 groups of dacoits. Each one of them could clean up 10 groups of dacoits just single-handedly. So they thought, well, we won't go near them. What's going on? And they started postulating, well, he's found out about us, and he's got some guards to protect himself. And so the Brahmana put it together. He said, no, that's not right. There's actually probably some king here, and he's lent him the guards to protect him. And, he's a Goswami, he's an avadut, and he's very, very cognizant of these things. He probably knows about us, and he's just got these guards here but they'll go away after a few days. The other dacoit said, "Oh, he can't be an avid dude. He can't be a ghost one. Look what he's wearing. Look what he's eating. He's none of that. We'll get him." So we said, "We'll wait a few days. We'll wait 10 days. They can't be there all the time." So they come back after about 10 days, and the night they come back, it was a really gloomy sort of night. It was really dark. There was no stars. There was these black billowing clouds. It was really scary. No one on the street, and even the dacoits felt a little bit apprehensive. They're clutching their weapons, and they come to the house. They were coming to the house, and when they come near the house, they were all stricken by blindness. They couldn't see. It's actually, I've got this written here. I can't do the justice to the story here. This is so nicely written that maybe I can just quickly relate it to you. This is quite... So the dacoits made another attempt to lay siege to Lord Nityananda's residence. That night, by divine arrangement, the sky was overcast with black blowing clouds that plunged the earth into pitch darkness. The streets were deserted. The dacoits held their weapons close to their bodies, feeling insecure in this sudden terrible gloom. As they came close to the house, they were suddenly struck by blindness. They stumbled forward, groping as if in a dark abyss, their minds paralysed, their intelligence unable to function. Some of them plunged into the moat surrounding the house and were immediately attacked by leeches, insects and giant mosquitoes. Some of them lost their way into the refuse garbage pit and fell in. The insects and scorpions were unsparing and vicious. Some others walked straight into a bush of thorns and became completely entangled and bruised by the big cruel thorns. Afraid to move in the dark and be further punctured, they remained like prisoners, unmoving. Others had veered far from the house and in the darkness, falling inside the canal near the house, and they lay moaning and groaning in pain with fractured legs and hands. So many dacoits, must have been a big group, many dacoits began to feel suddenly very feverish. They began to slowly consider their plight. Just at this moment, Lord Indra, with great pleasure, sent down sheets of rain accompanied by raging storms and ominous lightning. Already the dacoits were being ravaged by leeches, scorpions and insects, and now they were being further inflicted by the merciless downpour. Then came large pieces of hail, pounding them endlessly. Although the dacoits did not die, they were tossed about in an ocean of excruciating pain and misery. Blinded and drenched, they began to shiver with clammy coldness, standing helpless against the fury of nature. Lord Indra, knowing that the dacoits had come to harm Lord Nityananda, became angry and punished them especially hard. So during that, then it goes on, I haven't got time to, I'll just finish it off. During that period, that young Brahmana dacoit, he started to reflect on all the events, and then he realised, I've actually been trying to rob the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and this is my punishment. And he knew that the only way out was to surrender to Lord Nityananda. So in his mind he surrendered and he began to chant, "Lord Nityananda, please save me, save me. If you save me, I promise I'll change my ways. I'll become your devotee." Like he was crying out like that. So Lord Nityananda, being all sentient, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he heard this, and all of a sudden the rain stopped and they got their sight back and they sort of recovered themselves and they all went home, except for that young Brahmana who was so thankful that he went inside the house of Lord Nityananda. He was there with all his associates. He put his hands up in the air, goes, "Jai, Nityananda Prabhu," and he paid his obeisances. Saviour of the most fallen. And then he started to feel these ecstatic symptoms all over his body, and then he began dancing and chanting and carry on. Everybody, all the other people were bewildered. Of course, Lord Nityananda knew. So then Lord Nityananda says, like, you're exhibiting these wonderful symptoms there. What's going on? What's happened in your life? And then the Brahmana, that he explained what would happen. We were going to rob you. First day this happened, we all fell asleep. The second day you had the guards there, and then this time we come, and then we got stricken by blindness, and all these bad things happened to us, and we can see that this was by your mercy that you actually are the Supreme Person of Godhead. So all the devotees, some were skeptic because they knew this guy. He had a terrible reputation. He was ruthless, right? And they're thinking, oh, is he going to come here to rob us again, or something like that? The others said, well, this is the mercy of Lord Nityananda. And then he began to dance and chant in ecstasy, and Lord Nityananda said, well, your solution is that you actually give up your ways. If you give up your ways, I'll take responsibility for whatever actions you've performed, and you just follow the path of Dharma and chant Hare Krishna, and convince all your other friends to chant Hare Krishna also and become righteous people. So then Lord Nityananda gave a beautiful garland, put it around this person's neck, and he was totally blissed out. So subsequently he did convert so many dacoits and rogues and thieves into becoming great devotees of Lord Krishna. So this was the mercy of Lord Nityananda, and there's a little bit about Sri Gadadhar Das. So thank you for listening. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Storyline. It's 25 past, so we're doing pretty well. No one else? No one? Jai, all glories to Lord Nityananda, all glories to Lord Caitanya, all glories to Sri Gadadhar Das. God, Hari Bol.